We are on. Hopefully you've all had an opportunity to check in. I am Elizabeth Brown, and I am your new moderator for the Hollis School District meeting, and I'd like to call this annual district meeting for 2024 to order. It is 7 p.m. First, I would like to start off the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I have asked Mr. Jim Belanger, a longtime moderator, both for the Hollis School District and the town of Hollis, to lead the Pledge of Allegiance for us tonight. I also have one up here on front, and you can, either way, you've got it covered. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we have members of the 6th grade band at Hughes who have come to play the Star Spangled Banner for us. Thank you. That was wonderful. It's always great to see the students that the district is supporting and the reason you came out to support these schools and these districts perform for you. Before we get started with the business part of the meeting, I would like to take just a moment to recognize all the veterans and those currently members that are serving in the armed forces. If we have any, I know we have veterans in the audience, if you would please stand so we can recognize you and your service. Thank you. Tonight, most of you know this is my first time as trying to serve as school district moderator, and I've got very big shoes to fill. Drew Mason has done this job wonderfully for many years, and I just want to thank him for his many years of service. And I got a good lesson on Tuesday night at how hard he works at making sure that the elections run smoothly and that our district meetings, both at the school board level and at the town level, run smoothly. So I just think we want to take a moment just to thank him for his service and his continued service. Very shortly, you may wish he was continuing to serve for the Hollis School District, but for tonight, you have me. We are going to take a moment so Amy Kellner can introduce the members of the Hollis School Board to you.
Good evening and welcome to the 2024 Hollis School District Annual Meeting. Thank you for carving time out of your busy schedules to attend tonight. I wanted to introduce the members of the Hollis School Board. To my right is Tammy Fareed, Rob Mann, and Ann Wake de Pasquale. I wanted to thank Rob for stepping up to fill a vacancy in a seat mid-year this year. And I also wanted to take a moment to thank Tammy for her years of service. I am personally so grateful for her dedication and mentorship over the years.
Now I'd like to give an opportunity for Chair Gehan to introduce the members of the Budget Committee.
Thank you. I'm As moderator said, I'm Tom Guillen, chair of the BudCom. To my left is Mike Harris, Darlene Mann, Mike Levitt, Chris Hyde. Two members are unable to join us tonight, Mark Cost and Mark Ledoux. And at the other table, Amy Kellner is the school board representative to the Budget Committee. And we're also joined at the table with Diane Levitt, who is the school district clerk.
Now behind me is Superintendent Andy Corey, who is going to introduce the members of the SAU staff and the Hollis School District that are here with us tonight.
First off, we have Gina Bergskog, Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Lauren DeGennaro, Director of Student Services, Kelly Seeley, Business Administrator, Candy Fowler is the Principal of the Hollis Upper Elementary School, Paula Risbicki is the Principal of the Hollis Primary School, Sarah Prue is the Special Ed Administrator, Carol Tyler is the Director of Technology for the SAU, Donna Smith is the Assistant Business Administrator for Hollis, and Abby Diaz is the Curriculum Coordinator for the Hollis School District. Thank you.
Have to significantly move the mic for me, and I really like the 6-foot step here. If I don't fall off of it by the end of the night, I'm going to call that quite the miracle. We also have meeting officials with us tonight. We have District Council Jim O'Shaughnessy to my right, as Diane Levitt has already been introduced to my left. She's the district clerk. We have the supervisors of the checklist who are in the back and who make it all work tonight, and the ballot clerks. And I have 3 assistant moderators here this evening. Drew Mason is one of my assistants this evening, Melinda Willis and Erica McDonald, who are all going to be assisting me and making sure the meeting runs smoothly. If you are not in the room and you are wanting to watch the video, you can stream it from the SAU 41 website. And there's also resources on the SAU 41 website, including a written copy of the meeting warrant and the proposed budget, and a copy of this slideshow presentation in case that is easier to follow. Before we get to the meeting rules, I was once a new resident to this town, and none of this made much sense to me. So if you're new, there's not that many new faces in the audience, make sure you pick up one of these in the back of the room, because what you're going to find is, you're going to find in blue, you're going to find each of the warrants that we're going to go over tonight. And if you go back a little further in the yellow pages, not the yellow pages I remember as a kid, but in the yellow pages here, you're going to find a copy of all of the rules that we're going to try to adopt as the meeting rules that are going to govern this meeting. These are very important documents that will help you be an active participant tonight in these meetings. These meetings are unusual and strange if you've moved here from a foreign place, like the Midwest. And New England has this wonderful tradition of town meetings, but town meetings and local governance only works as long as the citizens in our towns understand how to come to these meetings and participate in the process. So one of the first things that we do at every one of these town meetings is we set the rules for the meeting. You all help us set those rules. I've got guided rules in our manual that we typically use, and that's what these are going to be adopted from. I propose the rules. They have to be adopted at every meeting. If you want to change the rules, there has to be a 2/3 votes. We more or less follow Robert's rules, in case I have anybody in the audience that studied the 700-page manual. So they're loosely governed on Robert's rules, but not exactly. So please, if you want to look at all of the rules that we're going to go over on a high level, you can find those in those yellow pages. It's important that we follow the rules and make sure that everyone in the audience is able to meaningfully participate in the meeting. First, we want to make sure that if you want to speak, you come to the podium, you wait to be recognized by the moderator, you speak directly into the microphone. Before you speak, please show your voting card, state your name, and state your address. Please speak to me as the moderator and not to other voters in the room. And please only speak once until other folks in the audience have had an opportunity to speak. Your time at the podium is going to be limited to 2 minutes. Okay, so I've already been alerted that somebody has misplaced, dropped their voting card that they're going to need to vote for the SAU budget later on. So check to make sure that you still are in possession of 2 pieces of paper. They're both yellow this time. This is your handy-dandy voter's card that you signed, and then your 1 ballot that you're going to need to vote on the SAU. Just double check and make sure you have both pieces of paper. So you'll have 2 minutes at the mic if you cannot yield your time to another speaker. No person shall speak at this meeting without leave of the moderator, so we shouldn't have anyone standing and grandstanding in the audience. We should speak in order so that all persons can be heard, and you should be silent if I ask you to be silent. If there's an opportunity for a point of order, you can bring something to my attention that I'm not following the rules that the legislative body sets at the meeting. That would be a reason to say point of order. And how do you do that? From your seat, you can say point of order. My rulings stand unless they're appealed. We don't take questions on motions, and if you believe that we are not following one of the rules, please indicate which rule that you do not believe has been followed, and we can identify that, and we can make a ruling on your point of order. At some point during a discussion on a specific warrant article, there'll be a time to end debate. That can be made from the floor if there's no other individual who has the floor and there's no one in line. A motion to end debate is not debatable. It also may not be made after a speech, so you can't come to the podium in order to give comments and then make a motion to end debate. I won't grant a motion to end debate if there has been insufficient opportunity to discuss a warrant, and it requires a 2/3 vote in order to end debate on any particular warrant. And if there is a motion to end debate and there are still speakers in line, I will allow the other members that are still in line to provide their input before we take a vote on the question. We can have a motion to reconsider. The purpose of a motion to reconsider is only to address new information that was not discussed at the time the vote was taken. Allows the meeting to discuss again the warrant in question and to vote again. A motion to reconsider is a debatable motion, and it only requires a simple majority for it to pass. In order to bring a motion for reconsideration, the one caveat is that motion must be made by a voter that was on the prevailing side of the question. Motions to restrict consideration, we often have. It does not prevent reconsideration, but it only requires, which is a reconsideration of the warrant question. It requires that later reconsideration of the motion be at least 7 days or later after today. A motion for reconsideration can be, is in order at any time a speaker has the floor, so you can come to the podium to make a motion to restrict reconsideration. And it should only be made after the results of a vote has been declared. You have the opportunity as the legislative body to appeal a ruling of the moderator. So if I make a decision that you don't like, you can appeal that. You can appeal any interpretation of the rules unless it is a rule that is required by state law. The appeal should occur immediately after I make the ruling. And the way you would do that is by saying point of order or I wish to challenge the ruling. An appeal of a moderator's ruling requires a second, so just like a motion would require a second, and it requires a majority vote to overrule a decision of the moderator. So I need a motion to adopt these rules to govern tonight's business meeting. I have a motion and a second.
I guess you beat me to it. Jim Melanter moved to accept the moderator's ruling.
Okay, so all those in favor of accepting the rules as presented? Motion passes. Thank you. So we have a number of warrants to cover tonight. Not going to read them. I've pointed to you where you can find the full text in the warrants in the book, and we are going to be putting those up on the screen in order of the time when we're ready to take those up. We have support staff, SAU budget, maintenance trust, building maintenance, and contingency fund, and the operating budget for the school district. Now I'm going to allow Mr. Geehan to provide some background information. Most importantly, what he will cover is the financial consequences of the votes that we will take tonight. Mr. Geehan. Yeah, go ahead. If you want to come there, they left you the pointer. Is there anything else you need to clear? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. First off, I'm not going to try to read all these numbers off to you, so we'll just talk about how they're moving directionally. Operating budget, which is the last article we'll consider this evening, is moving up about 4%. Later in the presentation this evening, we'll have a little more detail on that. As we will with the warrant articles, you can see those increased about 8%. Revenue came down fairly significantly, about 32%. That's really driven mainly by an expectation that unexpended funds from our current fiscal year will not be at the same level as they were last year, because unexpended funds, excess revenue rolls over and becomes revenue for the next year. So we're budgeting a little bit conservatively there. We've seen increase or underspending as a result of COVID the last couple of years, and I think that's finally washing out of the system. You can see the movement in state aid and the retained tax. The total tax effort, should have paid attention to where there it is. Total tax effort is the amount, the net amount, the appropriations we approved this evening and offset partially by the revenues, and you can see that's going up 9%. That number's actually about 8.6%. As a result, the tax rate is expected to go about 6%. The portion attributable in our current year to the Hollis School District is $5.48. Expect that to go up to 6% to $5.83. The state tax rate is essentially flat. So overall, we're going to see expect to see a 6% increase. 2 points I should have opened with. One is up here, assumes that all the articles as presented are passed. And when we get to the next slide that talks to the overall town rate, that applies to not only the Hollis School District, but to the town and the co-op as well. The other important assumption is a 2% increase in the tax base. That drives how the calculation for the tax rate is done. So this is a somewhat similar view. We've taken the specific dollars out, and we're looking at the components of our local property tax rate. The ones in yellow are what we vote on at each of our meetings, and the white rather are not controllable locally. So again, assuming all the articles in all three of our meetings pass as written, we expect the town portion of the tax rate to go about 9%. The local tax rate that I just covered on the previous page for the school district, 6%. Co-op increasing about 11%. And that gets us to an overall tax rate of $17.89, or an increase of 7%. It's unlikely that that number will come in if everything passes, come in at exactly that number, because the growth in the tax rate, the tax base is unlikely to be exactly 2%. And we sometimes get revenue updates before the time that the tax rate is set. But that's directionally where we expect to be going as a result of the decisions that we're going to undertake during meeting season. And I think that's it.
Okay, Article 1 that we have on the agenda tonight is HESA, the support staff contract. This is year 3 of a 3-year contract. The article reads, to see if the school district will vote to approve the cost item included in the 3-year collective bargaining agreement reached between the Hollis School Board and the Hollis Educational Support Staff Association for the 2024-25 school year, which calls for the following increase in support staff salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels. It shows for FY25, $87,179. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $87,179 for the 3rd year, 2024 to 25 school year, which sum representing the negotiated increase over the 2023 to 24 salaries and fringe benefits. This article was recommended by the school board 5-0-0. It was also recommended by the budget committee 8-0-0, and you can see the estimated net tax impact there on the screen for 3 cents per $1,000 mill rate. Chair Kellner will present this article. This has been moved by Rob Mann and seconded by Tammy Fareed.
Thank you. This warrant article represents the final year of a 3-year contract for the support staff. This agreement was not San-Bernized, which means that the contract items are brought before the voters each year. The Hollis Education Support Staff membership is comprised of custodial maintenance staff, paraprofessionals, secretaries, and food service employees. And these employees are critical staff, ensuring the cleanliness and safety of our buildings and providing supports and services for students that need such things. The highlights for the next year are a 4.5% increase, which totals $84,779, as well as an increase in the insurance caps. An additional increase to the monthly insurance caps of $50 for a 2-person plan and $100 for a family plan. This contract allows the district to compensate fairly and competitively to address staffing shortages and attract and retain high-quality employees. Are there any questions?
Okay, at this time, it would be the appropriate time to debate the article. If there are any members of the public who would like to speak to Article 1, please come to the podium at this time. I do not see a rush at the podium. Can I get somebody to make a motion? I'll call the question. All those voting in favor of Article 1, please show your cards. You can take them down. All those oppose Article 1? Motion carries. I have a motion to restrict reconsideration for Article 1, and I have a second. Call the question. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 1, raise your cards. All those opposed. Motion to restrict carries. Okay. Article 2. So Article 2 is the SAU budget. This is the one that we have to have a ballot vote for. This is the time that you're going to get to use your fancy yes and no voting card. The wording of Article 2 reads, shall the school district vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $734,279 as the Hollis School District's portion of the SAU budget of $2,377,762 for the forthcoming fiscal year. This year's adjusted budget of $2,356,823 with $727,813 assigned to the school budget of this school district will be adopted if the article does not receive a majority vote of all the school district voters voting in this school administrative unit. The article on the SAU budget was recommended by the school board 5-0-0. It was also recommended by the Budget Committee, 8-0-0, and the estimated net tax impact you can see on there is 25 cents per thousand. Article 2 is moved by Rob Mann and is seconded by Tammy Fareed, and we will have a presentation from the school board by Rob Mann.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Rob Mann, and in addition to serving on the Hollis School Board, I was also appointed treasurer at the SAU governing board level. In that capacity as treasurer, I lead the committee that built the SAU budget for FY25, that being a number of $2,377,762, which comprises a 5% change of $109,388. And the main drivers here are, for the proposed budget, is around salaries. There are increases that are applied to a merit pool and also salary adjustments, and that increase is $81,980. It also, as a second driver, is around benefits, which comprises increases to taxes and retirement due to those salary changes, and also health and dental insurance rates, which are 18.7% and 4.7% respectively. We also have the adjusted budget for FY24. That is a number of $2,356,823, and that will be applied if Article 2 fails. So I ask you to support Article 2 for the proposed budget, and I'll take any questions that anyone has.
Hi, Sue Hamola, Mendelson Drive. I was just wondering, do you know if this was already voted on in Brookline and what that vote was?
I know that they are doing SB2, so that goes to their ballot votes for Election Day. So I suspect they have voted on it. I don't know what the outcome is specifically.
You guys don't, oh, I'm sorry, do you have that? Okay.
Drew Mason, Baxter Road, and moderator of the co-op. The vote Tuesday, at the Brookline election was yes 350, no 467.
Kathy Lewis, Terrell Lane, Hollis. I guess I don't need to say the Hollis. I thought in the not so distant past, we used to not announce the vote for this article until all three districts had voted. I could be wrong, but I've been voting for 35 years, so I think there was a point that we did that, because I wonder if the Budget Committee and the school board knew that Brookline was not supporting this, if you would have maybe voted a different way, and I'd like someone to explain to me how we're going to handle this budget if now there are only 2 districts that could potentially pay for it.
Yeah, it doesn't work like, yeah, why don't,
Or we can have the lawyers speak to it.
yeah, I don't want to.
Jim, do you want to explain how the vote on the SAU vote is cumulative, not by district?
Go ahead. I mean, it's not that complicated, you know.
2 lawyers are going to fight over who gets to talk. It's a cumulative vote, so it's all 3 districts, and all the votes from all 3 districts are combined together. So if it carries the other 2 districts, it doesn't matter that it failed in Brookline, because it's the cumulative vote of all the voters in the SAU that cast a ballot in this election.
Okay, so it's going to be all the Brookline noes and yeses, and all the Hollis noes and yeses,
You
and
got
all
it.
the co-op noes and yeses.
You have it correct.
Okay, so
And
it is imperative that tonight, that if we want to make sure that we support this and we want everyone to pay their fair share, that we need to resoundingly vote yes for this.
Yes, and the fact that it failed in Brookline will not impact the fact, if it carries the 3 districts, that is the article that will be imposed upon Brookline, and that they will pay their proportionate share.
Okay, they can't just say we don't want to pay it.
You are correct.
Okay, I just needed that clarification, thank you.
I just want to just respond to one other thing. Jim O'Shaughnessy, thank you very much. The law doesn't allow the moderators to embargo the votes, so I think in the first instance, the results aren't announced, but if they're asked for, it's public record, so those numbers can't be kept secret. Also, I don't know if Liz, the moderator, said this or not, but if the vote is no cumulatively, then the smaller number is what becomes the budget, and it's about a $20,000 to $21,000 less.
Joe Garuba, 28 Winchester Drive. So my question is specifically about that adjusted budget. If we do end up not passing this article, the adjusted budget is about $20,000 less. So I would like to know what specific impacts that are foreseen if we go to the adjusted budget as opposed to passing the proposed budget.
Well, I think it will mostly affect the key drivers around salaries and benefits. There may be some. Yeah. So most of that changes would affect the main drivers, which would be salaries and benefits. There may be specific line items that the superintendent may want to point out, because it's many, many lines of budget, so there may be specific ones he may want to address.
If the adjusted budget were to pass, we would have to go back and revisit the budget, and I would make proposals in May to the SAU board. Because one of the pieces that is not in the adjusted budget is hourly wage personnel don't have contracts, so they're not in the adjusted budget. So that's about $14,000 of salary increases to people who are making $17, $18 an hour as your accounts receivable, accounts payable, all of those folks. So we'd have to go back and I would reevaluate the budget, but whatever number the voters give us is the number we'll work with and we'll make it work.
Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak to Article 2? Seeing none. Oh, Mr. Enright.
Tom Enright, Orchard Drive. I just want to express my disappointment in Brookline in not passing this budget. We have outstanding administrators, and I have not recently gone through this budget, but in the past I have. and I compared it to other administrative budgets, we are not out of line. In fact, we're probably on the lower side. But these are very good people, and we should support them.
Seeing no one else who would like to speak to Article 2, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of Article 2? Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, it's a valid vote. Thank you. So, thank goodness my assistant moderator has like really good. So this is the one. If you want to vote yes, you need to fill in the circle, fill it in fully. If you want to vote no, fill it in fully. There's pencils on the back table in case you don't have one, and there's 2 ballot boxes there. I'm going to take just a couple minutes and allow you to go drop your ballot into the box. Pardon? No, this does not need to be left open for an hour. This is going to be done. If we can get folks to return to their chairs, while this has to be done by secret ballot, it does not need to be left open for an hour. And some of us are getting old and have early bedtimes. Plus, it's rookie night here at the district meeting, so we'll see if we can't make it as quick as possible. So The next article we have tonight on the warrant is Article 3, which is the SA Building Maintenance Fund. Is there anybody who has not had an opportunity to drop their ballot into the box for the SAU budget? Seeing no one who is trying to go, oh, we got one last one. Anyone else? If not, Drew, have you already dropped in? Okay, well, I wasn't sure. You were still back there at the table. I didn't want to close. So I'll close the ballot boxes on the SAU budget at 7:41. Back to the Article 3, the SAU Building Maintenance Fund. To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $23,970 to be added to the previously established maintenance fund for administrative and associated structures at 4 Lund Lane in Hollis, map 56, lot 2. This amount to come from the unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year. This amount represents the rental proceeds and unexpended maintenance funds to be received from SAU 41, and it further to name the board as agents to expend from the fund. This article was recommended by the school board 500, recommended by the budget committee 800, and has no estimated tax impact. This Article 3 was moved by Rob Mann and seconded by Tammy Fareed. And Tammy Fareed from the school board has a presentation regarding Article 3. Ms. Fareed? Yes, it does. Just 2 ways.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm going to move the next slide over. As this explains background, purpose of the article, funding, and oversight, as you can see. Hollis School District owns the property at 4 Lund Lane. We refer to it as the SAU 41 offices because we rent the property to the SAU 41 administrative unit. The rental that we charge our school districts goes into this fund as a sort of savings account. This is the way the state allows school districts to retain funding year over year. The purpose of this article, as I said, is expendable trust is a savings account. This is structured by RSA through the state, not just a school board designed method. Used to carry forward SAU 41 rental income. We simply keep this money with your permission each year in order to maintain the property. It's a 110-year-old farmhouse and needs constant upgrading and upkeep. Oversight of trust funds in general. As you can see from the slide, major expenditures are proposed by the administration. When they recognize a need, they propose this to the school board. There is public debate, public documentation. The school board evaluates and presents a plan to the budget committee for their input, and the school board makes the final approval for expenditures. All of these steps are not only carried out in public sessions, but also documented in minutes and archived videos, live streams, so everyone can participate and see what's going on. In this little chart, you can see that we are opening the FY25 projected opening balance is $116,720. That's money that has been accumulating year over year from this $23,970. Proposed funding is, again, the finite amount up to the amount of rent we receive. We have proposed projects. Almost always, we have a lot of projects on this building. We've done so much work to the property that this coming year, we don't have an identified project to spend on. However, the roof is quite old, and it's 3 stories up, and we are wanting to retain the rent in this trust fund in order to build up an amount that can address any needs as the roof ages. The general expectation is that in 2 or 3 years, we're going to start seeing some significant need to replace at least portions of it. We're famous for using things to dust, but we don't want leaks, we don't want mold and all of that. So if you approve tonight's contribution to that fund. The projected balance at the end of FY25 is $140,690. And that is my presentation on this particular article.
Is there anybody who would like to speak to Article 3? This is your opportunity.
Hi, Jonathan Fontaine, Ironworks Lane. I had a question about the proposed funding. There are a number of warrant articles that will put money into different funds and whatnot. Just wanted to double check. So the proposed funding is coming specifically from the rent money that the district is accruing. Okay, and I'm getting a nod, so.
I wanted to comment on this in the past, and I continually forget. This rent income can go into the general fund.
Okay.
It can. We're requesting from you that you allow us to hold it in this trust fund. We can't spend it on anything else if you say yes, other than what this trust fund is set up to do, which is maintain that property. It can be used for septic systems, et cetera. It's not just the building. And again, with the process being that it's publicly discussed if we want to expend it differently than we promised you at this meeting. And going through the budget committee also, there's a multi-weeks, multi-month process.
Yeah, it was more with the previous, I think, Article 1, talking about revenue drop and possibly not having leftover funds or less than expected. I was curious just.
So the law requires school districts to supply space for their SAUs, as school administrative units, which are state agencies. So our districts, all three of the districts under SAU 41, have to host this administrative entity. And so we all pay together rent, and it just so happens that Hollis owns the property that is rented to them in the past. So they've been in this building since the early 2000s. Before that, I think they were in a commercial section of town. We have had occasion over the past number of years to look at comps, meaning comparable spaces for the price. Can we do better on the price? Can we do better on the physical space? Because they're packed in there like sardines. And again, between Brookline and Hollis, we've just found this is so far the optimal setting. And so we feel that the rental income is an appropriate way to take small amounts and hold them to give us long-term and short-term, medium-term, long-term planning for the short, medium, and long-term needs that this property demands of us.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Chris Opelka, Moore Hill Road. Is that figure 23,970 the entire rental figure that you get?
That's correct. So that's 3 districts paying rent for the SAU. That's right.
And I
And
think
a reminder just that it's up to that amount. If something were to come up before the unassigned fund balance is completely settled, we're not asking that amount, it's up to that amount. So there is some discretion.
And I believe you said something about what the state allows in terms of an amount. And I'm curious to know.
Not an amount, a technique. So the town is allowed to retain unassigned funds that haven't been expended. Towns are allowed to retain those, period. School districts are not. So unless we use trust funds with the permission of the district annual meeting to retain some of that money in these particular vehicles.
Where I was going was, is there a goal of how much you really want to carry into that? I understand it is
That's a very good question.
an old building, and
Right.
you're going to have things come up. And my other question is, sort of related, is how old is that roof? And is there another big project that, you see coming up?
So the roof is probably 8-10 years old, maybe a little older. I've lost track of it, to be honest. It's not failing, but it's showing where some shingles have fallen off. There's always squirrels nibbling on it. So what our district is very good at is medium and long-term planning. There's a capital improvement plan that's got a rolling 5-year plan and 10 years, for
Right.
big things, small things. This is the first year in my experience that we didn't have a project planned for the subsequent year.
Right.
Because in the past few years, we have been very good about just balancing the retained amount against the needs of the building, of the property. The roof is something that's coming. And you know, roofs are so incredibly expensive. So the request today is to allow us to continue what we've been doing for over a dozen years of retaining the rent in this trust fund so that when the roof hits, we have the means, and if anything else comes up, that we also have this means.
What about, you know, a limit of how much you want in this fund?
I'll be honest, we haven't discussed it. I think this is the first that I recalled. This is the first time, again, that we've faced an upcoming year that didn't have projects that were needed. So the thought is it's a long-term planning step with small amounts that would never suffice by themselves, but over time, you know, 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Joe Garuba, 28 Winchester Drive. My question is about the fund in general. It talks about the property at Lund Lane and the associated structures. And so far, we've discussed the roof of the administration building. Is there any long-term plan to spend this money on the barn?
So just as COVID was hitting, just that week, we had an entire package ready to present to the voters about a very large renovation to the entire building and barn and property. The public had given us some funding to do architectural studies and other kinds of due diligence, and we were ready to ask you for a significant support for a significant project that would have turned this building into a much more effective property for the entire town, for the community and the SAU's purposes. That week of the meeting, COVID shut everything down. The town wasn't able to have its meeting 2 days later. So we tabled that project and have not, and in the meantime, we have had enrollment pressures that have shifted dramatically since the pandemic eased. And now there's a new committee formed by the Hollis School Board to look at facilities in general, because we have a huge surge of students coming in from kindergarten, preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and we want to study this. Is this a bubble, or is this the long predicted enrollment increase over multi-years that has us concerned? In the meantime, the SAU staff is squeezed. So there needs to be a larger question than we anticipated when we first created that plan that we wanted to bring to you and scuttled. This money is only spendable on the property itself for, you know, I mean, $100,000 is only going to do most of the roof. It's not enough money to do anything to the barn. It's a very big question, and we have together studied it over many years. I think the first architectural study was maybe 8 years ago that Rob Mann sought. So it's a big question, and we want to make a really judicious decisions with lots of public input, lots of discussion with the budget committee as to what exactly are the enrollment likelihoods and what should we do about it.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else for Article 3? Seeing no one, I will call the question on Article 3. All those voting in favor of Article 3, the SAU Building Maintenance Fund, please raise your cards. You can take them down. All those opposed to Article 3 for the SAU Building Maintenance Fund, the article carry, the motion carries significantly. I have a motion to restrict reconsideration by Mr. Harris, and I believe I heard a second by Ms. Fareed. All those in favor of the motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 3? Thank you. All those opposed restricting reconsideration on Article 3? The motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 3 Carries. We can move on at this point in the business to Article 4. Article 4 is the School Building Maintenance Fund. To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate up to the sum of $125,000 to be added to the previously established School Building Maintenance Fund from the Hollis School District's June 30, 2024 unassigned fund balance for transfer on July 1, 2024. So this article was recommended by the school board 5-0-0. It was also recommended by the budget committee 8-0-0. And the estimated net tax impact is there's no rate increased because the unassigned fund balance is the sum of unspent taxes and revenues, and expending funds that could potentially be returned as revenue equates to foregoing potential rate reduction. This Article 4 is moved by Rob Mann and seconded by Tammy Fareed. And Tammy Fareed from the school board will speak to Article 4.
This looks very similar to the previous description of the previous article, but the funding source is different. So the purpose of these trust funds, the town uses them, we use them, is a sort of a savings account to carry forward funds for major building maintenance. The idea being that if we can squirrel away small amounts per year, we can accumulate enough sums to do big projects that would make the operating budget very difficult to manage. In this case, the funding source isn't rental income, it is the unreserved fund balance surplus. And I can answer any questions about that. Oversight is very similar. Major expenditures might be proposed by the administration. The school board evaluates, presents that plan to the budget committee for their input. Typically, this takes multiple iterations back and forth, and the school board makes a final approval of expenditures. Excuse me. So this chart shows you the plan for spending out of this maintenance fund, especially if you approve tonight's request. So the first item is an exit lane addition, end of Drury Lane. End of days at school is a traffic nightmare, and we want to expand the Drury Lane entrance and exit to facilitate traffic flow there. It's long in coming. Also, in the second column where you see either both or Hughes or HPS, we do a lot of the accounting based on which building we're spending on. So if you see both, it just means that it affects both schools' accounting and budgeting line items. And that's $25,000. Elevator retrofit. So what you can't tell from the front of the Hollis Upper Elementary Schools is it's actually 3 stories down. And because of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and we have an elevator that can move students and staff safely. So that elevator is as old as the original edition that installed it, and the administration sees that there is going to be some needed retrofits soon in the coming 2, 3, 4 years. And elevators are very expensive. They have earned their stripes at the SAU on the elevator at the middle school here, which only serves 2 floors and was a multi-year challenge to address because it's such a critical function and it's very, very expensive. So we're seeking $36,000 from this year's unassigned fund balance. Again, up to. Make sure you note that on these articles, it's up to. Boys' bathroom stall replacements, again, items that have aged out of the building and need replacement. Exterior cameras and entrance security upgrades. These are, we have safety committees that operate within our buildings, within our district, that include our Hollis Police, Hollis Fire, a number of other resources. And when these recommendations come before us, that's the source of the request. So exterior cameras, $20,000, exterior entrance security upgrades at Hughes, $20,000. Secure entrance upgrades, phase 1. There are a number of upgrades. feel very strongly need to take place in order to further harden our buildings, and this is one of them. $40,000. Alarm access control updates at the primary school. Again, these are upgrades to systems that are working, but we feel very strongly need to be improved. And then wall-mounted heat controls. When we did the massive energy efficiency projects that included upgrading the heating and systems, et cetera, the heating controls were centralized, and we've found over the years since those things were installed that we need more flexibility classroom to classroom for all sorts of reasons. So we would like to do something that we've tried to do in 2017 when we first started that project, but it always fell out as the least important item, and that's $20,000 to give teachers and our custodial staff, et cetera, flexibility around individual classroom controls. So the FY25 project total is $251,000, which would leave $89,000 as a balance ending at the end of FY25, which is about how much we like to see in that fund, because if many of you who've been here a long time remember the famous mold 13 years ago, things can happen that are really unpredictable. I see smiles, it wasn't funny. And so we'd like to keep some balance in this account. Again, if we ever needed to expend it in a way not approved, not listed tonight, it would go through a process that's the school board, the budget committee, and so forth.
Go ahead.
Jonathan Fontaine, Ironworks Lane. One question I had was around the exit lane addition, not because I don't think it's necessary, I brought my kids off, it is. But this is for the school buildings and maintenance fund, whereas I feel like an exit lane in particular would be for the town or the state, given the roads. So I'm trying to understand what is involved with that particular estimate and why it ends up falling in this budget and not some of the other ones.
So Drury Lane is part of the school district's property.
Oh, okay.
And the town is not responsible for it. We are, it's the same pocket, you know, your left pocket or your right pocket, but it falls under our responsibilities. So for example, we pay for plowing the Drury Lane. We pay for through the school district accounts, but it is still your taxpayer.
Okay. Just as a secondary question, is there also any budget line around that related to the parking that's currently in that area? Would that?
The parking in that area, if you're facing Silver Lake Road, the parking on the right is mostly reserved for staff, the teachers, et cetera. And the parking on the left, more of there's plenty of staff that park there also, but you know, there's some visitors slots and stuff. It's a very tight property. So no, this does not extend to anything that you're not seeing. And just something that you mentioned earlier made me think. One of the designations that causes a project to fall under the maintenance trust fund versus the operating budget is a large one-time expense that can be planned for and accumulated for and isn't really part of daily, year-to-year operations like teachers or programs. So we found that this is a more transparent way of presenting to the public, because if we had these multiple large projects in one budget one year, and then the next year it's all gone, the budget swings wildly and it's confusing and it's difficult to really compare apples to apples over year to year. So this is something the budget committee and the school board and the administrations work together to try to isolate big one-time projects.
Sure. One follow-up question is, so because you have a couple major phase items or security enhancements, as you said, there's a committee talking through that. I'm assuming the proposals and discussions are available through public record at this point, online somewhere?
Sure. If you look at our minutes from the past number of months, I will say you won't see a lot of detail about what exactly these expenditures are, because that would be indiscreet given the purpose
Yes.
of them.
Understood. Thank you.
Chris Opelka, Moore Hill Road. I just have two questions to follow the fellow before me about your two-phased projects. On the scheme of things, I realize that the money is probably small. However, I do remember when I was at a co-op meeting and the roof was starting to be discussed about being replaced. And I happened to ask the question, how many phases were we going to have? And that was pretty significant question and answer. When you have phases, phase one, I get a little nervous. And I guess my other suggestion would be, once I get the answer, is you might put phase 1 of 6 or so down, and it just might be a little bit easy. I won't have to get up here and ask.
If you want a more detailed answer, I would ask the superintendent to talk about the number of phases that are anticipated. I think you're right that if it said 1 of 6 or 1 of 4 or whatever, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Roofs are torture. We learned this during the installation of the solar arrays on buildings. It's a jigsaw puzzle of figuring out how to not replace a roof if it's okay and which patches need to be made. So I'm going to leave it to Andy to answer your question.
The elevator is 1 of 5. It's going to be about $200,000 to replace the elevator. We believe the life expectancy will get us to there. We just did the middle school in the same fashion. And the security grade is 1 of 3. But it is known we are getting some security grant money from the state that will be coming to the board. And just because you commented on it, the roof was 10 phases. We've done 9, and we'll be finished this summer. It was about $2.5 million, and yet we paid as we went.
And I think I remember with your answer also back then was, by the time we're finished with the phases, we're going to start all over again. So I was like,
It's just like your house at home.
So
you do over the family room, and by the time you get to the front room, it's time to do the family room again.
So I'd like to see when we do phases that it's 1 of whatever.
We will do that.
Please. The other thing is, I don't want to assume anything. Are all the phases kind of evenly distributed in terms of money? So we can say 5 phases at, $36,000 a year or whatever. So we can have more of an idea of what we're really voting for.
Yep. The phases for the elevator are pretty consistent.
Okay.
The security entrance will be kind of based on what's going on at that point in the project. I mean, if we're replacing the glass so it's close to unbreakable, that's a whole different cost than if we're replacing the entrance doors.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you.
Erica McDonald, Truell Road. I just have some questions about the $115,000 in security and access updates. I realize that you can't give us details, but that's a lot of money. Are our schools not safe? What is the reason for all of these things?
First of all, I would tell you that our schools are very safe, and we do drills on a regular basis. Every summer, we have an evaluation done by the fire department, the police department, and often by Homeland Security from the state. And they come in and they make recommendations. And they prioritize those recommendations so that we can budget them in this fashion and continue to move forward. So when you look at $20,000 for cameras, those are areas that right now are uncovered, but they're the least of our worries. Mm-hmm. But now we'll have coverage on all of them. If you were to go in the main office, you would see the television screen that gives you the whole campus. So the secretary can see the entire campus sitting at her desk. The security upgrades, I can give you an example at HPS. It used to be a buzz to get through the first door and you were in the building. Now it's buzz to get into the foyer, buzzed again to get into the building. Okay. So it's a lot of things like that. We're going to be spending some money on some different types of glass. I wouldn't call it bulletproof, but it's going to take you a while to get through it, because the biggest thing we've learned from all the tragedies is you need to buy as much time as possible. We're very fortunate. We're right down the road from the police department, and we have a wonderful SRO. But everything we can do to buy time is what we need to do for our kids.
Very good. Thank you.
Joe Garuba, 28 Winchester Drive. I see a project for the exit lane, the exit at Drury Lane, which I suspect would have implications to traffic flow on Route 122. So my question is, does the school board plan to take these changes to the planning board to be vetted before they're implemented?
The planning board does not have jurisdiction over the school district's properties.
Yes, that is correct, but I'm asking if you will do it as a courtesy.
Oh, I'm sure. I can't imagine anyone would have any objection to doing so.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mark Constantian, Twist Lane. I've run a private practice and I've had to run a house for many years, and none of the projects that I have ever gone through have so many nice round numbers. That concerns me. It means they're not based on competitive bids, and I'd be much happier supporting these numbers if they were real numbers. Secondly, if I'm the boys bathroom stall replacement guy you have come in, and he knows you've already got $20,000 set aside, it's going to be an awful temptation to charge you that money. So why can't we get nice, tight bids before we ask for money to appropriate? Thank you.
The difference between your house and our district is that our district gets its funding in March, and then the work can't start until July 1st at the very earliest. This money cannot be spent tomorrow. It can only start being spent July 1st at the earliest. So we can't get bids on major projects this early out because contractors aren't willing to hold those numbers for the time period needed. That is one factor. So we've put placeholders for estimates that we get from professionals who we've utilized for other work. You know, these are providers that we're all very familiar with. And they're placeholders for the estimates. We hope that it will come in less. But that is the reason why you see these nice, tidy, round numbers, is that we can't get quotes this far out ahead of the work.
Jamie Sullivan, Federal Hill. I have a question about the exit lane addition. Is there going to be parking taken away, or is the field, that space in the middle with the fence around it, going to be taken away, or how logistically is that going to happen?
So you know the big sign that says Hollis Elementary
Yes,
Schools, right?
yes,
So
yep.
there's a nice plantings in front of it, some
Yes.
grass, and on the other side as well. So those will be pulling away the grass. The idea isn't to create another huge lane leading all the way up to Hughes. It's just to allow right turning cars to go ahead and turn right so that the left turning cars don't hold them up. It will just smooth the egress from the schools.
So those spots that are right in front of that will be taken?
No.
The parking spots? No.
No, just grassy areas.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
just
you.
not the playground grassy area, just the little
Yeah,
grassy
it's
areas in front of the
confusing.
sign.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Brian Loveland, Toddy Brook Road, and I would support this measure. These are all very realistic estimates, and as you said, the estimates because we can't get bids for it right away. And for multi-phase projects, they can, where it's like phase 1 of 6, you can't really get an exact number for a contractor to do it in 6 years. And I don't know anyone that would want to try to reduce the security amount, where it's not saying that the school is unsafe, but increasing the safety of the school is money well spent, where there's new information coming out each year and new threats, so that we should use the money to address those and not just rely on the fact that we have a great police department and emergency responders, because as Mr. Corey presented, the time is of the essence, and getting the extra time is what is huge difference. So and none of these costs, it's not building something fancy or something that is not needed, because the fact that the wall-mounted heating controls, even in my house, if you go to one room to another, the temperature can be different, and by making it so that there's only one temperature, there's going to be rooms that are hotter and colder, and that you don't want to boil one room while you freeze another. Thank you.
I'm going to add to what Mr. Corey said, that we're trying to learn from other schools' mistakes.
All right, seeing no other speakers for Article 4, going to call the question. All those in favor of Article 4, the School Buildings Maintenance Fund, please raise your cards. Thank you. All those opposed to Article 4, School Building Maintenance Fund, please raise your cards. The motion carries. I know you're all waiting with bated breath because you saw the assistant moderator hand me a piece of paper. I have the results for the SAU budget. Article 2, there were 76 yes votes. There were 27 no votes. The motion carries. You're correct. So that is the one that will get combined with the votes from Brookline that occurred Tuesday at their voting session, because they're an SB2 town, and will be combined with the 3rd district, which is the co-op, and the co-op's annual district meeting is next Tuesday at the high school. So as we spoke earlier, whether the SAU budget carries on Article 2 is a cumulative yes and a cumulative no vote of all 3 districts that make up the SAU. Correct, Mr. Harris? Next up, we have Article 5, the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund. To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate up to the sum of $25,000 to be added to the previously established Special Education Expendable Trust Fund. The sum to come from the Hollis School District's June 30, 2024 unassigned fund balance, available for transfer on July 1, 2024. This article was recommended by the school board 5-0-0. It was recommended by the budget committee 8-0-0. And the estimated net tax impact on this is there's no rate increase, because like Article 4, the unassigned fund balance is the sum of unspent taxes and revenues, expending funds that could potentially be returned as revenue, and equates to foregoing a potential rate reduction. Article 5 is moved by Rob Mann, and it was seconded by Tammy Fareed, and there'll be a presentation on Article 5 by Board Chair Amy Kellner.
So this Special Education Trust Fund is a tool that was established to manage unanticipated costs relating to special education. These unexpected costs could result from a student who requires special education services moving into the district over the summer, or a mid-year change in student placement. The school district is obligated to fund these costs, and this trust fund lessens the risk that regular education programs would be impacted by unforeseen special education costs. This trust fund was established in 2019, has a current balance of $125,000. We have never utilized this trust fund in this district, but it has been used in other districts, and there's a non-statutory cap of $280,000.
anybody to speak on Article 5? So we've been a little generous on the timing, so try to keep your comments and questions to 2 minutes, and I am running a timer here, so we'll just try to remind folks to, that was the rules that your governing body set, and I just know we've been a little liberal with that, so please.
Chris Hopel, Moore Hill Road. My only question is, how much is in the unexpended trust fund? What is expected to be there? Because we've had a few things that have.
So just as a reminder, the unassigned fund balance is the sum of unspent taxes and revenues, and we don't know what that number is as of yet. Do we have an estimate of where it's projected to be?
Right now, we're looking at about $70,000, but that absolutely could change.
Right, did I hear it correctly?
$70,000.
70,000, and some of the other things have been a lot more that we've already
Right.
voted for.
And so if we don't have the balance in the unassigned fund balance at the end of the year, then this trust wouldn't be funded.
Okay, and do I understand it correctly? They're funded in the order of the articles?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Hi, John Worthington, Emerson Lane. I just noticed we have quite a few trust funds, and since banks are paying real interest now instead of pennies, I just wanted to ask, like, is this money in accounts that are bearing nice, generous interest, like in the 4.8 to 5.5% range now, because that's what high-yield money markets are paying. Hopefully that's where we have it, not at 0.02% in a savings account.
It's governed by the trustees in the town.
But I don't know what that means, though.
I can explain.
So, does that mean yes or no, or you don't know?
Yeah, so they're interest-bearing accounts, but I don't think we know what the interest
All
rate
right.
is.
Well, I would propose that we try to get as much interest as we can if the money's just sitting in the bank. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Willis.
Melinda Willis, Wright Road. They don't earn very much money. They're extremely conservatively invested because we can't risk.
Of course.
So just so you know, so they're not making a lot of money. I think this is a great idea. I was on the budget committee when we started doing this concept, when the law started to allow it. I generally support it. I think, though, for this specific line item, the fact that we already have $125,000 in the trust fund, I think given that we're looking at a 6% increase, if there's little ways we can save money, we can, or should not spend money, we should, and if it's not put into the trust fund, then we actually get the money back against our taxes, so it is a real savings. It's not a non-expenditure. So 99% of the time I support these articles, but this one I respectfully think we should not fund this year, and I look forward to funding it next year.
There's no one else in line to speak to Article 5.
Can I just say one thing? So I just wanted to clarify one thing. So there is a sort of non-statutory cap of $280,000 for that trust fund, and one unbudgeted child that could come into the district with special needs could cost the district $100,000. That is one student.
Seeing no other speakers to Article 5, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of Article 5, funding the Special Education Expendable Trust, please show by raising your cards. Thank you. All those opposed to Article 5? Thank you. Motion carries. I have a motion by Mr. Harris to restrict reconsideration for Article 4 and Article 5, and it was seconded by Ms. Fareed. All those in favor of the motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 4 and Article 5, raise your cards. Thank you. All those opposed to restricting reconsideration on Article 4 and Article 5, raise your cards. Motion carries to restrict reconsiderations on Article 4 and Article 5. Thank you. Next up, we are to Article 6, which is the contingency fund. To see if the school district will vote to establish a contingency fund for the current year for unanticipated expenses that may arise, and further to raise and appropriate a sum of $95,000 to go into the fund. This sum to be raised by taxation. Any appropriation left in the fund at the end of the year will lapse to the general fund. This article was recommended by the school board 5-0-0. It was also recommended by the budget committee 8-0-0. And the estimated net tax impact was 3 cents per thousand on the tax rate. This Article 6 is moved by Rob Mann, and it was seconded by Tammy Fareed, and it'll be presented by Ann Wake Dispascal at the school board.
Good evening, and thank you for coming this evening. The purpose of the contingency fund is really found in its name. It's to cover unanticipated major expenses that could arise during the school year. What we are most concerned about, while this could be used for maintenance, it's mostly to help defray the cost of an additional classroom teacher if the need should arise. I'm sure everybody has noticed we have houses going up in Hollis all the time, whether they are new builds or new owners coming in, and those houses are often being occupied by families with young children. If during a summer there should be an influx of families with children of a particular age, the scales may tip at a grade level, and now we're going to need a teacher that we had not planned for in our operating budget. The contingency fund would help defray those costs, minimizing the impact on our operating budget where there are funds that are earmarked for other purposes. There are two aspects of this that are noteworthy. These funds are only available if the board votes in favor of the expenditure, and that would be after a public hearing is held. Unused funds at the end of the year are released to the general fund. So that would go back to the taxpayers if we did not use these funds. Thank you.
Article 6.
Yeah, Jonathan Fontaine, Ironworks Lane. So the question I have around this, and the purpose was helpful, is given the current budget we just approved, contingent on other things, do we have any staffing openings currently that are not filled at either one of the schools that would have been included in those budget numbers to begin with? And secondarily, can anyone speak to the current capacity limits of the two schools in terms of how close to capacity in the classrooms are we? Is it one kid extra that we weren't anticipating? Like, when do we switch over from the classroom teacher to student ratio gets increased to, no, I need a whole brand new classroom? Because that's not clear, but clearly the point of the fund.
Mr. Corey.
What we traditionally do at each meeting is monitor enrollment by grade level, by classroom. And we alert the board to where we see trends where this could become a problem. The policy actually has ed specs for certain numbers, but it gives the board and the superintendent working together the authority to make the best decisions around class sizes. So very late in this school year, we had an influx of students at grade 1. Because of the teacher shortage and other factors, we felt it was better to go over ed specs and we provided more paraprofessional support across the grade level. What we're seeing now is a concern just around teachers in general. There is a lack of people going into the profession. So we're very conscious of this, and we try to stay away from the contingency fund. So the first goal, even if we state to the board that we are going to use it, is to see if I can find that money in the operating budget in areas where maybe we had planned to do something, and for whatever reason it doesn't happen. And then ultimately, if we needed to, we would go to the contingency fund. But we are seeing an increase. We have started an enrollment committee because we do see this problem continuing for the next few years.
Okay, one follow-up, but I'm trying to stay within the 2 minutes. So I have children in the kindergarten and the second grade, and I know second grade expanded to some extent this year, and that you sound like first grade also expanded. So my question is, as part of the budget that was already done, not including this contingency fund for unexpected, are we already managing that ripple effect? Because obviously you've done it for first to second for the following year. Second to third is going to come up, and how are we managing that?
Correct. So if we added a section at grade 2 and went from 4 to 5, we're projecting 5 sections at grade 3, and then backfilling where appropriate.
But that wouldn't necessarily be unanticipated because we're seeing those numbers?
That's correct. Okay. That's correct. So the teacher that we added to the budget from last year, unanticipated, is included in FY25 to become part of the ongoing process. This would be for the unpredicted teacher that we may need.
Okay. Last question was, so the $95,000 for, I'm assuming, salary and benefits, is that a significant percentage of the salary and benefits given the skill sets you may need for an unanticipated teacher? Or is that just, like, is that in the 80% coverage and we'd have to find the rest kind of question?
That would cover, we typically are hiring somewhere between masters, step 5 to 7. We're not a district that typically hires students right out of college. We have some because they've been exceptional and interviewed very well. But we're kind of a destination district where folks who have been teaching for a few years want to arrive on our doorstep.
Okay, thank you.
Great
answer.
Seeing no other speakers to Article 6, I'll call the question. All those voting in favor of Article 6 for the contingency fund, please raise your cards. Thank you. All those opposed to Article 6, the contingency fund? Thank you. Article 6, the article carries.
Second.
I have a motion to restrict reconsideration from Mr. Harris and a second from Ms. Fareed. All those in favor of the motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 6, please raise your cards. Thank you. All those opposed restricting reconsideration on Article 6? Thank you. The motion carries to restrict reconsideration on Article 6. Article 7, we've made it to the operating budget. To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $16,464,092 for the support of the schools, for the payment of salaries for the school district officials and agents, and for the payment of statutory obligations of the district. This appropriation does not include appropriations voted in other warrant articles tonight. Recommended by the school board 500, recommended by the budget committee 800. Article 7 is moved by Tom Gehan, and it is seconded by Amy Kellner. Mr. Gehan?
Thank you. At the start of each budget cycle, in September, October timeframe, the Budget Committee deliberates, considers economic conditions, current spending, other factors, and comes up with what we call guidance for the school board for formulation of the budget. This year, particularly given that we had a significant increase in this year's tax rate, the guidance that we provided was a 0% increase. Now, I have to qualify that a little bit because it's not a strict year-over-year comparison. There are certain things that go in and come out. For example, debt service can change each year.
Debt service can change each year. If debt service were to decrease significantly, and we see that from time to time as bonds roll off, that would create, if we didn't adjust for that, that would create a windfall, a potential windfall of spending that we don't want to see happen. At the same time, it can work in reverse. If we were to take on new debt service and we suddenly had new bonding rather and had new debt service, we wouldn't want to take that money out of operating activities. So the guidance that we had, and the other significant factor is costs that to some extent are non-discretionary. Best example of that is collective bargaining agreements, the teacher union contracts and the support staff contracts. Those have previously been approved by this body in prior years, and we are obligated to meet the needs or meet the requirements of those contracts rather. So with that context, we set a guidance budget of $16,465,591, and the school board and administration came in at just under that, about $1,400 underneath. First question that is typically asked is, what are the staff implications? This budget, as written, would add 5.7 full-time equivalents. What we're going to see here in this slide and the next is we see or anticipate increase in special education costs. So we've got 3 regular pairs. Superintendent Corey spoke or touched on this in his comments a moment ago. Regular educator at the primary school because of an anticipated enrollment increase. And then you see, I'm not going to read each one of these, but we have pre-K coordinator and intensive needs para for special education, and so forth. And we have a shared resource at the bottom, a special education secretary that services both schools. What I'll do now is hit on the major increases and then the major decreases. As you can see here, the top increase, and they're ranked in terms of absolute dollars, an increase of about $190,000 in special ed positions. That is done in response to anticipation of the needs. The administration works diligently each year to come up with an anticipated cost of special programs for our special ed students, and you see that that expectation is going to require more resources in this budget. Second is the special ed transportation. We occasionally, I think it's fair to say that the administration strives to keep all of our students in the district. Occasionally, there are students whose needs cannot be met in our local schools, and we coordinate out-of-district education for them. And one of our responsibilities in that case is to provide transportation for those students. So we have an increase. We've not had that cost in recent years. We have it. We anticipate having it in this budget. Classroom teacher salaries, an increase of almost $70,000. I touched on that while setting the context. That's a result of collective bargaining agreement that was passed in prior years. Teacher degree changes are, teachers can move around or move along the salary table, the wage table, based upon their attainment of certain education, getting a master's degree, for example. And we anticipate some additional expense because the teachers have upgraded their credentials. Extended your school year wages, that's a special education program. And finally, the computer equipment replacement each year. There's an assessment done of the technology that the kids are using in the schools, and there's an ongoing replenishment program, and that's the anticipated increase in the cost this year. Major decreases this year. First off is a teacher retirement benefit. There is, per the contract, an opportunity for teachers, if they declare at a certain point, capped at a certain number, can get an additional benefit. Apparently we're not anticipating, we haven't had any teachers declare for that. Bond interest has gone down. Health insurance, in a rare case, is on the decrease slide as opposed to the increase slide. And the last 2 decreases, school psychologists and behavioral specialists, those decreases or lower budget amounts are the result of filling those positions at a level that was not as expensive or not as costly as we had anticipated when we budgeted. And I believe that is it. Thank you.
No one? Is there anyone who would like to speak on Article 7? Mr. Enright?
Tom Enright, Orchard Drive. The talk on the trust funds has been fascinating. But what I'd like to do for a minute is ask some questions about teachers. That's what I'm interested in. And think should be a part of discussion all the time at district meetings. So my question is, and you have a new contract that you have to negotiate next year. So maybe my question is relevant to that. I'd like to know, last year and the year before, how well you've been doing with hiring. I'd like to know if you've been getting a good pool of candidates. I'd like to know if you've been able to hire the best candidates, and I'd like to know what your retention is. And I'm asking that question because at the co-op, we're having trouble, and I'm hoping you're not having that trouble. I have gone through all 3 contracts, and I will tell you that in my judgment, your contract stands above the other 2 by a fairly significant amount. So I'm kind of hoping that you're going to give me a positive answer here.
We have an incredible teaching staff. And as I said earlier, we are still considered a destination district for teachers. I will tell you that in the last 5 years, we have seen our applicant pool go down significantly. I'll give you an example. 5 years ago, if we had a first grade opening, we probably would have had 50 or 60 resumes. If we get to 10, that's a good pool now.
And do you mean 10 good applicants? And I don't mean to be judgmental here, but...
No, I would send 10 good applicants with a range of novice to veteran looking to come over. Where we're really struggling, and which is very, very difficult, if we have somebody who needs to go out on sick leave or who is expanding their family, getting staff members for those critical pieces is getting very, very difficult. We have had to work with the Department of Education and use different resources to put them on what I'll call starter plans to become an educator, overseen by the assistant superintendent. They are wonderful people, they are qualified, and they are doing a great job. But at the same time, that is a radical change for the Hollis School District.
And are you hiring the people that you want to hire? I mean, you told me what the pool is. Mm-hmm. Are you getting the candidate of choice?
I would say in Hollis, the answer to that is on the majority, the overwhelming majority is yes. In
Good.
our other districts, we have been rejected quite often because it comes down to money.
I know that.
Yep. That's why I'm asking for it.
That's why I'm standing here.
Yep.
And how about retention?
Retention has been outstanding in the Hollis district. I mean, other than retirement and people who have been planning their retirement, we're not seeing people walk out the door. That is not necessarily true at, say, the co-op level, because industry is pilfering science and math. We had our AP physics teacher leave 2 days before school started for a job in industry. We're losing next year's physics teacher to industry.
No, I know the co-op, but this is a different certification here. And apparently you have the pool, you have the contract, and you're able to hire. I think that's what I've heard, and I'm very happy to have heard that.
There are a number of districts just this Tuesday that passed very good contracts. So next year will be an interesting discussion as we go through those negotiations with the Hollis teachers.
Okay, thank you. And I just say that I know you're having a big turnover in the school board, and it's not easy to negotiate a contract. And this contract, your contract, is a very good one. So if you don't have qualified, experienced people with all of the new blood next year, I hope you consider getting somebody who's negotiated contracts before. I'm certainly looking at one of them, and his smile is going to go away, but actually I'm looking at more than one. But good luck. This is a good contract, and let's keep it that way.
Hi, Lillian Gruba, 28 Winchester Drive. I believe I had seen something about a preschool coordinator slash preschool teacher. Was that a dual position? It is a dual position. Can I ask about the enrollment for preschool? What is the enrollment looking like for preschool projected?
I can comment on this year's, where about 12 to 14 of the typical peers and their non-typical peers. The position that's coming in as the coordinator, they're going to spend half of their time focusing in on those students with IEPs to help parents transition and through those meetings, and the other half, they'll be in the classroom working with students.
Okay, so they wouldn't actually be the preschool specific classroom teacher. They would be floating in to provide the services that they needed, I'm trying to understand the position.
There'd be more of a teacher, but their other responsibility will pull them out at times. So let's say I had a coordinators meeting at 10 a.m. There'll be other teachers in the classroom, so the ratio will fluctuate, but we feel this will provide us with a very solid ratio to meet the demands of the students.
Okay. Oh, it's a half-day program, so they would do more of the coordination and the meetings the other half of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes so much more sense to me.
Okay.
Can you also just talk about a little bit about the enrollment? How many preschool classes do we have currently, and how many kiddos are in the class?
So we have two preschool classes currently. We have two preschool classes currently that have special ed students and typical peers. Those numbers right now are about 22 for two half-day, morning and afternoon. Then we have an intensive needs program. But our numbers are growing, so we're adding a half-day morning section because our numbers are going to go above capacity. So we're going to need to increase for next year.
Okay, and I'm sorry, did I miss, what is the class ratio as far as how many students?
Yep, so right now in our morning program, we have about 6 and 6. Afternoon program, we have, I believe, 5 and 6. I have to take a look.
Well, I'm a preschool teacher in Hudson, so that ratio is awesome, just saying.
Would you like a job?
I'm like, wow.
We have a coordinator half-time teacher open. I'll take the resume right now.
I'll consider it.
Our recruiting methods have had to change.
Chris Opelka, Moore Hill Road. I have a question about the next slide. I think it's the next slide.
This one?
No, it was about the staff changes. Articles, maybe it was the one before. I'm sorry. The one in the, it was when you had total, yes, that one. It says that the total adds to staff is 5.7 full-time equivalents. If the ones that are listed, oh, you're taking, is that a minus sign after the one regular para? So does that, because I had added, I'm sorry, I had gotten 7.7, and even so, does that 3, 4, 6, 6.7? Is it 6.7 full-time?
It nets to 5.7 full-time equivalent.
6.7 minus 1 is 5.7.
Okay.
It's 5.7, not 5.27.
Okay.
All right. Seeing no other speakers to Article 7. All those in favor of the motion on Article 7, the operating budget, please raise your cards. Thank you. All those opposed to the motion on Article 7, please raise your cards. Article 7 passes. Do I have a second? Second, Mr. Mann? I have a motion and a second to restrict consideration on Article 7. All those in favor of restricting restrict reconsideration on Article 7? Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. All right, we're to Article 8, which is to transact any other business that may legally come before the meeting. I do not have any other business, and there is nobody in line to bring other business, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I have a motion from Mr. Harris to dissolve the meeting, and behind me I can hear that Mr. Mann is seconding. I have all those in favor for a motion to dissolve the meeting. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you, and good night.
I will not be here next week. I have someone covering for me.